Hi, I'm Lisa Carlson, and I'm the campus dietitian at Northwestern. And this is Ask the Dietitian session, which is a great collaboration between Northwestern Rec Center and NU Dining. And today's topic is really the science of a good night's sleep. Who can't benefit from this? And I think this is really great for students as well as anyone who frequents the rec center. So we'll start by just taking a look at this diagram. A lot of times we think of health and happiness and performance, whether it's physical or mental performance, as a healthful diet's important. Obviously, exercise is important and managing stress, but we often don't think of sleep. And now we're starting to see the science shows that sleep is just as important as these other three. So that's why we're going to talk about it today. So here's a little bit of our agenda. We talk about the benefits of sleep, how much we need, sleep deprivation, what problem does that cause? A little bit about the a weight correlation with sleep, why all-nighters don't work, and that's good for any students, and then tips on getting a good night's sleep. And some that we all know, but I think a couple little gems in between. So what are the benefits of sleep? I think a lot of people think that sleep, is just a waste of time. I mean, I hear that a lot from students, and it is not a waste of time. Think of sleep as being really restorative. And it's kind of like your brain is still active when you're sleeping, but all of that activity that sometimes happens when you're awake is calmed down, and your brain has a chance to process information. And it's really when your brain has a time to take a look at the information and form memories of the important information. And it's really, really interesting. It also plays a really important role in just overall health. And what we find is we don't sleep enough and we're chronic lack of sleepers, we could be more prone to some chronic diseases. And if we're already in that camp of having some vulnerabilities, whether it's with heart or diabetes or weight, this might compound it. And sleep definitely helps with strengthening our immune system. So that's of course important. I just want to put this little quote in here, and this is from Dr. Jessica Payne, and she's from Notre Dame University. And she is truly a sleep expert, and she's got a class at Notre Dame that deals with sleep. But I went to a workshop where she was talking, and I think one of the important things she says in this quote is that sleep is really important for committing information to memory and for uh, problem solving. And whether you're a student or you're an adult or a younger person, younger child, any of us need this. This is really helpful. Often I get the question of how much you need, and we often hear 8 hours of sleep, and that's a good figure because it's kind of an average. It's in the middle of what we need. Usually in high school we need a little bit more, and in college we need a range of 7 to 9 hours, and that's where the 8 hours comes in. When we get a little bit older, and that's older after 24, is we can get by with maybe just a little bit less sleep. But overall, 7 to 8 hours is really the key. Some people can get away with less sleep, but not that many, not as many as think they can. And it's really important not just the quantity of sleep, but the quality of sleep. We've all had restless nights where we may have gotten the numbers of hours of sleep, but not really good sleep. So that's important to get both. When how much do we need to get? Well, or do we get enough? We don't get enough, that's for sure. And the Gen Z generation, which is kind of late high school and into college, we're our the audience is seriously in debt and in sleep debt. And 1 out of 3 adult Americans don't get enough sleep. And actually, more than half of people who are employed say they have fallen asleep on the job, which I think is a little bit scary, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. I think all of us have probably felt a little sleepy and have kind of closed our eyes a little bit at work and maybe even in Zoom meetings. So maybe that's not totally unexpected. So why the sleep deficit? Well, it's for all kinds of reasons, and most of these on this page, I think we could all recognize we're completely overcommitted and overscheduled, and that goes for all of us, all adults, students in particular, Northwestern students, that's for sure. The academic pressure. When I talk to students and I realize they're in classes so much of the time, and then the rest of the time they're studying, or they're in clubs, or trying to get together with friends, a lot of overcommitment. They're also on their phones. Social media takes up a lot of time, more time certainly than it did, 10, 15 years ago. A lot of times there's peer-to-peer interactions. Students are having issues with their friends, or maybe their friends don't even know about it, but they're thinking of these things, and they're thinking of these things at night. Anxiety and depression, and then all kinds of other things that might be chronic sleep problems, and certainly being overweight. I'm not really going to get into sleep apnea, but that's another one of the sleep condition that can certainly be a problem. What does not getting enough sleep lead to? Reduced performance, and that's any kind of performance, definitely school performance, but just performance in thinking and making decisions. Risky behavior. The research shows that if you're sleep deprived, you're just not you are likely to do things possibly that you would not have done if you had more sleep. It might even just be, I say risky behavior, but it might even be snapping at a colleague, or just taking a chance that you might not take. Motor vehicle accidents. This is a bad combination when you're a young person and you're sleep deprived. There's research that shows that when you're sleep deprived, it can be very much like having too much alcohol when you're in front of the wheel. So that's certainly not a good combination. And poor health, whether it's diabetes or heart disease, some of these things, if you already have some of the indicators, this does not help. Having not enough sleep, and definitely reduced memory, because sleep, as I mentioned earlier, just the restorative power of sleep. Sleep allows you to process information while you're sleeping, and you might not have good memory for it or creative thinking if you don't get enough of it. I do get this question from students about sleep connection with impacting grades, and the research shows that yes, if you don't get enough sleep, and if you're chronically not getting enough sleep, you're not going to be able to concentrate. You're not going to be able to recall information that you had just studied, and there is research that shows that your grades can suffer. Um, Research in particular shows that those students who get about 6 hours or less of sleep have a lower grade point average than someone who gets more. And this is just a little bit of a graph, and this was done several years ago, but I think the latest research kind of backs it up, that says it could even be, a half a grade difference if you get quite a bit less sleep. And in this case, it's comparing with about 7 hours of sleep, someone who got less than 5 hours of sleep. And that would truly be a chronic lack of sleep. So another question I get from students has to do with cramming and trying to study and studying all night. Is that good? And we know from the research that that's not good. And part of it is because you don't get enough sleep. Pulling all-nighters, you're not going to be as alert. You're going to likely have poor academic outcomes. And it does have to do with just that restorative process and being able to form memories that you get from sleep. What about naps? I sometimes get this question. I don't get it from students, but I do get it from older adults. And What the research shows is that we could all benefit from naps. I mean, I know that our work environment isn't really conducive, although there are some work environments that do actually have nap rooms. And if you see this little picture, you can see some of these kindergartners really have their eyes open. But ideally, we could benefit from about 20 minutes of a nap in the afternoon. If you go for a lot more, you might be waking yourself up in the middle of a deep sleep, and that could make you more drowsy, more groggy, which is not something you want. You want just something that's kind of a light sleep. So if this is something even that you do on weekends, probably not a bad idea. Can you catch up on sleep? I always like this question because I always hear students saying, oh my gosh, I pulled all-nighters. I'm going to catch up on my sleep on the weekend. And you know what? The answer is no. You really can't catch up on sleep. I think I would compare this to you can't catch up on time. You know, if you waste time, I mean, you can't get it back. So same thing with sleep. You really can't make it up in the way of gaining that restorative sleep that you lost. So it's better just to get it the first time. Before bedtime, you want to be careful, a little bit careful about your diet. You don't want to eat too much and you don't want to eat too little. Eating too little meaning you're going to be starved or you're going to be hungry and maybe even getting up in the middle of the night. But you certainly don't want to go overboard and eat too much because that way you're not going to get a good night's sleep. Here's just a couple of ideas for eating before bedtime. If you need a little snack, I think my favorite might be a cup of warm milk and a cup of hot chocolate or something like that. An hour or two before bedtime can be good, or just a little bit of carbs or a little bit of protein is good too. Here's another little graphic that kind of says the same thing. I think the one thing is you want to avoid caffeine, that's for sure. I think as we get older, um, we are more affected by caffeine. I hear a lot of students saying, "Oh no, I can take caffeine right up until bedtime." Well, as we know, as we get older, that's definitely not the case. So if somebody is drinking energy drinks or caffeinated beverages, better to do that, 2, 3 hours more before bedtime, and also something like chocolate. And I would also mention alcohol too, because that alcohol before bedtime, too many hours close to bedtime, can really undermine sleep as well. There is a connection between sleep and weight, and it comes in a couple of different ways. If someone is very overweight and they have sleep apnea, that's a whole different thing, and we're not going to really talk about that. But that can cause someone not to get a good night's sleep. So there's a connection there. But there's also overweight if you don't get enough sleep. And this particular research study showed that if someone was overweight in the study and they added about an hour, 0.2 of sleep, they actually consumed fewer calories, 270 on average, and there was no change in energy expenditure, so they actually lost weight, and that was compared to a control group. So there might be something about getting better sleep to control weight or even to lose weight in that study. We all know that you have to be careful about screen times, about not watching television, being on your cell phone, or being on the computer too close to bed. And really, it's better not to bring those screens into bed, not having a television in your bedroom and not bringing your cell phone into bed. And I like to tell students, if they can, to put their phone on mute, to turn it off when they do go to bed so they don't hear a ping or a flash of light. Exercise can definitely help. Exercise too close to bedtime can make you too alert. So that's something to watch out for. But if you do it 2 or 3 hours before or more before you go to sleep, that can be, really get you relaxed, and especially if you have low key exercise or stretching or yoga, that can be really good and helpful to get a good night's sleep. And The other thing that I'd mentioned about sleep being restorative, it's so good for our mental state, and it's really good as a reducing anxiety, and we're a better problem solver if we do get sleep, a good night's sleep. Couple little things about, just losing 90 minutes of sleep can make you less alert the next day. Um, Again, it's hard to form memories when we lose sleep or don't get enough. And studying, all that studying that you do will not stick as well if we don't get a good night's sleep. So, kind of pulling it all together, it's really good to make a sleep plan, and it's good to make a study plan. That is, if you're a student, or even a project plan. I like to write down on a piece of paper what I'm going to be, some key things that I'm going to be doing the night before, and then just place it in another room. So that means I don't have to think about it at night while I'm sleeping. Establish a good routine and really stick to it. And that means getting into your sleep clothes, brushing your teeth, just doing all of those things, your skin routine, everything that you do before you go to bed. And so you just, when you get into bed, you want to know that you're going to be in bed and go to sleep about 20 minutes before you get into bed. You want to avoid large meals, caffeine, alcohol, extra fluids close to bedtime. That makes sense. That's kind of what we talked about. I think turning off the electronics can't be said enough. And I really think just putting them aside, turning them off so you don't get reminders that they don't blink at you. Another thing I think is really important is to make sure that your bedroom is really dark. I mean, I've seen students put black shields on their windows so they really block everything out. If you're in a place that's noisy, I mean, I talk to students who are downtown Chicago, and they say that the noise of being downtown, or if you're too close to Northwestern downtown, you might hear sirens and things. Just even wearing earplugs is good, and wearing eye masks, not a bad thing. Um, Taking short naps to be able to, kind of recharge so that when you do sleep, you're good. And using your bed only for sleep, only for intimacy. In other words, don't be taking schoolwork into bed. Don't be eating in bed. Don't be taking your cell phone in bed. All of those things, really making your bed a haven for sleep, a sacred place, is so, so very important. And I guess finally, that's why they say sleep on it, because you kind of think about putting your brain to sleep, and then you can kind of process information, and that's really how it goes. So hopefully that was beneficial. And if anyone wants to contact me, it's dietitian at northwestern.edu, and I hope you work on having a good night's sleep. Thanks.